Hey, new podcaster, I have some sage podcasting wisdom for you. Your download numbers don't mean jack, especially when your average consumption rate is in the toilet. In this video, you're going to learn why, as a new podcaster especially, you need to be focused on your average consumption rate rather than your download numbers. And I'm going to show you 4 places where you can find this magical stat. I'm Jen Eads, the head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcasting Company, and I am sharing new podcasting videos every other Friday. So make sure that you have subscribed and hit that little bell so that you know when new podcasting videos are available. The average consumption rate measures how much of your podcast your audience is actually listening through. And this is the primary stat that you need to focus on as a new podcaster because it's a measure of the quality of your podcast. I was actually podcasting for a few years before I learned that the download is not the almighty measurement of your podcasting success. Thank you, Elsie Escobar from the E-League, for drilling that into our heads. I was a much happier podcaster after I learned that little secret. Podcasting is a long game, and unless you've got a big audience already built in when you start your podcast, chances are good you're not going to see great big download numbers right off the bat. And if your average consumption rate sucks, you're never going to see big download numbers because it means you aren't keeping your audience entertained and engaged for the entire length of your episode. If they're getting bored, they're not coming back. And if they're not coming back, you can bet that they aren't sharing your episode with their friends, unless it's a really horrible episode and they're like, oh my gosh, you should listen to this podcast. It's terrible. You don't want that. Okay, here are 4 places you can find this magical data squirreled away. The first one is Apple Podcasts Connect. Remember where you went to submit your RSS feed to Apple Podcasts? Log back in there and go to the Podcast Analytics tab, and you will see your consumption rate in percentages. You can also find this information in your Google Podcast Manager, your Spotify dashboard, and in Stitcher. Now, the thing to keep in mind that is each one of these platforms only gives you the information for that specific platform. But you can piece the information together and get a pretty good gauge on how much of your episodes is your audience actually listening through. Here are some data points that you want to make sure that you are paying close attention to. The first one is if you see a big drop-off in your listeners, go back to the episode and see what happened in that spot. Did you talk about something controversial? Did you have horrible sound quality? Did you maybe just get really boring? Who knows? But go back and look at exactly what was happening at that point in time in your episode. Looking at this consumption rate is also going to give you some really good insight into how long your listeners are listening. And it may not really have anything to do with the quality of your content. Maybe it happens to do with the behavior of your listeners. So look to see if maybe there's a sweet spot. Maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 25 minutes of where your listeners are actually getting through most of your episode. There you have it, podcaster. Those are a few reasons why looking at this average episode consumption rate is so important and so insightful in helping you make a better podcast. If you're thinking about launching a podcast or maybe relaunching a podcast that you ghosted on a while back, because let's face it, podcasting's hard. Schedule a call with me to see if my Launch to Legendary podcasting program is going to be a good fit to help you reach your podcasting goals. I'll have a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching. Now get out in the world and do some good.